Have you ever lost your cool with your kids, vowed you'd never do that again, only to find yourself yelling at them an hour later or a few days later? Yeah, that's happened to me too. How about this? Have you ever found yourself lying awake at night wondering if you're doing the right thing or if you made the right decision for your child or if you just totally screwed up their life? Sounds like me too. Well, I want you to know you are not alone. This is what happens to all good parents. But as a child psychiatrist and mother of two, it's my goal as the parent doctor to help you find some useful answers about how you can prevent these things from happening and have each day be better than the last. After all, we all are striving to have a trusting, connected relationship with our kids, and we all want to launch kids who are ready to be adults in this great big world. Parenting is not just about raising successful kids, it's about raising ourselves, mastering our own emotion regulation, breaking cycles, and creating a home and life filled with love, resilience, and connection. If this resonates with you, please join me in the Empowered Parent Club. Follow, rate, and share this podcast with anyone that you know who would benefit from it. Let's get started. Welcome back, everyone. This is Dr. Marissa Caudill with another episode of the Parent Doctor podcast. I'm really thrilled today to have my friend Jessica Siegel joining us. She is a registered dietitian, and she's going to explain to us how that is different from a nutritionist shortly. But she's here to talk to us about the importance of family meals and how we can use that as a way to incorporate the Mediterranean diet for all of its health and social benefits for our families. So thank you, Jessica, for joining us today.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be able to talk about this topic.
It's such an important topic. So this is something I'm really passionate about because if I had to tell you what I think is my biggest weakness or failure as a mom, like the thing I feel most parent guilt about, it's my kids' diet. I feel like I could have done a much better job, but I had my kids when I was just so busy that it was easy for me to fall into the trap that I think a lot of American parents find themselves in, which is buying the prepackaged processed food, the veggie nuggets, and sticking it in the lunchbox. And now I fear that they don't really enjoy trying new things. So tell me what I should have done better. Did I totally screw them up? Like,
No, you have to. Yes, do not stress. Don't worry at all, because I tell everybody this. Every meal is a chance for a fresh start, right? We all eat multiple times a day, and we're going to do it for the rest of our lives, hopefully. So there's always opportunities to do better and improve and try new things. So definitely don't beat yourself up about it. But I do agree that feeding is parenting. So it's really important. And I think that a lot of parents don't think of it that way. But it is an important job that we have to teach our kids how to eat, how to behave at the table, and how to, have social skills around these things too.
So you were telling me when we talked before the recording of this podcast, when we were making the plan, about your own family and how you and your partner decided before you even had kids that family meals were going to be an integral part of how you raised your family. So tell me how that looks in your family and how you think families who aren't doing that on a regular basis could start successfully implementing family meals together.
Okay, so I'm going to be honest, because I don't think, it helps anybody if I'm not honest. It's a commitment and it's not easy. And so my husband and I, when we first met, we decided we were going to have dinner together every night. And, we were both just starting our careers and working long hours. Sometimes we would eat dinner at 10 or 11 o'clock at night, but we always made sure to commit to eating together. And so it became kind of second nature to us. It's just like all the acrobatics that happen around it. It's just part of the deal. We just have accepted that and we proceed as though like we can do this. And we're flexible with the timing. And, like we were saying the other day, you said you go to bed around 8:30 at night. And I said, that's the time we actually eat dinner because that's when everyone's finally home. So it's that kind of commitment. And so, and I know dinner time is a crazy time. It doesn't work for everybody. So I just do want to make sure to make the point that breakfast could also be a family meal. So if everybody's together in the morning and mornings are easier for you, it's 100% okay to have breakfast as a family meal.
Okay, that gives me hope because the idea of all of us eating dinner together is challenging. So you're saying you really made a commitment. Like if one of you has a work dinner, you don't eat at it, you wait and come home and eat with your spouse? Like, do you
Okay, we're not that strict. So, okay, like I need to back up and say that like Healthy eating is flexible eating. Okay. So like you can't like if something's just not going to work, like it's okay. Like
Okay. So
you
not
get the
every day.
benefits. Yes. Like the benefits come from at least five a day. Like the most benefits come from, there's that threshold. If you can only do two, you're still going to get some benefits, like 2 meals a week, you
Okay.
can get some benefit. But like if you want to maximize the benefit, it's like at least 5 meals
So
a
this
week.
has been actually studied, and are you talking about health
Yeah.
benefits? Are you talking about like social benefits for families? Both?
Both. Yep.
Yeah.
Both health benefits, social benefits. Yep.
Do meals eaten in the car on the way to sports practice count as family meals?
Hmm. That's a tough question, actually, because like so much of the structure around family meals also kind of has this principle of giving food the attention it deserves.
Yeah. No, I know that it doesn't. I'm just thinking last night my son had his final cross country meet in
Yeah.
Inglewood. So I had to pick my daughter up. It's our crazy lives, especially
Right.
in LA where there's so much traffic. I had to like leave at 2:30 to pick my daughter up from school early to drive over an hour to get to Inglewood. I was hungry, she was hungry. Then we waited like an hour and a half for him to be done with his meet. And we were all then starving. And I'm like, all right, we're stopping at McDonald's. I mean, we eat at McDonald's probably twice a year, but I was like so hungry. I was just like, I can't be in traffic again for another 45 minutes and then have to cook you something when I get home at 7 p.m. So we got home and my husband was like, did you guys eat already? I'm like, yes, we went to McDonald's. So he's like, okay, so he just made himself some leftovers. But it's hard, but I think it's absolutely, I agree with you for so many things, right? A family meal offers an opportunity for younger kids to have a chore, which helps them feel like they're mattering. So whether they're setting the table or helping you chop the veggies or putting out the condiments, like anything could be helpful. Then there's just sort of the ritual about being together. And I feel like this is becoming a lost art. As my
Hmm.
husband and I go on dates, when we are in a restaurant, we look around. When you start looking at people in their teens and 20s, it's very common to see people really not interacting that much and having their phones out. Like everyone at the table has their phones out and then they're sharing the experience via the phone kind of more than they are in real life with each other. So I think if we don't start at home with putting away all the
Hmm.
screens and devices, making sure we're sitting and devoting time to be mindful about eating and mindful about spending time with one another and socializing, then we're missing an opportunity.
100%. That's so correct. And I think that you're making a really good point about the screens too, because part of the big picture, like what we're doing as parents is modeling, right? We're showing kids how to be healthy by modeling those behaviors, not by telling them, not by, praising them or bargaining with them or pressuring them. No, none of those things, because, and we're talking about kids. Kids aren't going to eat something because it's healthy for them. It has to taste good. So it's a big picture thing. And I know that you think of parenting this way too. It's not about getting kids to eat their broccoli tonight. It's about getting them to eat their vegetables for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
And so the pressure and like the short view of it doesn't really benefit anybody. And it actually is really bad for your relationship with your kid because then it's just like every meal is a food fight. So
Mm.
having more of a long-term big picture in mind when you're committing to having family meals is going to benefit everybody the most.
Yeah. And, with the majority of adults being overweight and struggling with weight issues, and I don't know if it's yet the majority, but it's a lot of kids too.
Hmm.
And now with social media and the kids' exposure to body image concerns and everything else, like I think our kids are more aware of this, even without our intending for them to be, than I was. Like my kids now, my second grader will sometimes read a label and tell me like how much sugar is in it because the kids at lunch are doing this and teaching each other like, oh, that has so much sugar, it's bad for you. It's not that it's wrong, but I do have concerns, especially as a girl growing up in Los Angeles where it's so image conscious. Like, what is
Hmm.
this going to mean for her in 5 years? Is she going to have her, eating disorder? Is she going to be counting calories? How do we talk to kids about healthy eating without going down that rabbit hole of macros and protein and carbs and fats and like really making them obsessive? Any recommendations on that?
Yeah, it's through modeling the healthy behavior. It's not about the didactic kind of carrots are good for your eyes and, oranges are good for your skin. It's not that. Or anything about calories or food labels. No, like it's more about modeling. Like this is what a healthy meal looks like.
Mhm.
And look, and not every meal is going to be perfect. And like I said earlier, it's about flexibility. Flexible eating is healthy eating. So that's why another reason why I love the Mediterranean diet. It's not a restrictive, prescriptive kind of plan. It's an eating framework. So you have flexibility. And once you understand the eating pattern, then you can make your own choices within that framework.
So talk to us a little bit more about the Mediterranean diet. How do you use that as a framework within your own family for meal prep, for meals, snacks? How do you talk to your kids about it? Some people may not be familiar with it. Well, they may have heard about it, but some people may not
Right.
really know what it means. So
Right.
let's
And there is a
assume I
lot
know
of
nothing.
nuance with the Mediterranean diet as well.
Yeah.
So the Mediterranean diet is something that I have been having expertise in for about 15 years, which is a long time. I'm a little bit ahead of the curve, and I'm very proud of that, actually. So it's not just the word diet is a little bit misleading with that.
Mhm.
So it's also a lifestyle. And again, it's a framework for healthy eating and living. And the reason why we've heard so much about it just recently is because there's tons of research studies that are showing that there's a lot of health benefits to the Mediterranean diet. So there's people who follow the Mediterranean diet and lifestyle have lower rates of heart disease, diabetes, overweight, a lot of diseases of aging, even like Alzheimer's, and
Mhm.
even allergies and asthma are decreased. Vision loss and hearing loss risk are decreased by following this kind of eating pattern. And then in terms of like mental health, people who follow this eating pattern also have lower rates of depression and anxiety. They have more vitality, which I think is fascinating and really important, right? Because it relates to that concept of health span. Like you want to live a long, healthy life, not just a long, unhealthy life. And so the Mediterranean diet supports that kind of longevity and vitality.
So what does the typical diet consist of? Can you give some general?
Yeah,
Okay.
so it doesn't exclude anything, but what it is this pattern where there's certain foods that you eat daily and certain foods you eat weekly or monthly. So daily, you would be eating lots of fresh vegetables, or really vegetables in any form, fruits, whole intact grains. There's only one food that's required on the Mediterranean diet, and that's extra virgin olive oil. So this is the most important. If anybody has one takeaway from this about how to start following the Mediterranean diet, it's using extra virgin olive oil as your main fat.
Okay.
So that means replacing any other oil or fat, like solid fat, butter.
Yeah.
And you need to make an effort to eat this. So it's not like get out the spray. You
Right.
want to actually add this to your food. There's a lot of health benefits to it.
Which again, I feel like for those of us who lived through the low fat craze, the Atkins
Mhm.
phase, like all the word fat and seeing fat in our ingredients lists makes some of us anxious. But you're absolutely right. The true Mediterranean diet, it's a lot of olive oil every day, right? Like how many
Yeah.
tablespoons is recommended?
2 to 3 for
Yeah.
adults.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like almost like a shot glass of olive
Yeah.
oil per day.
And some people do that. They just drink
Yeah.
some olive oil as well. And so it's emphasizing healthy fats. There's also avocado and fatty fish, which offer, and nuts and seeds that offer healthy fats. But the olive oil has very unique benefits. So you have to include that. And you can use it for baking as well.
Okay. Does it just replace butter one to
Hmm.
one per
Pretty
tablespoon?
much.
Okay.
Yeah. It depends.
Putting you on the spot, but do you have any recommendations or foods that incorporate olive oil that your kids like that you would share? Whether it's a baked thing or do you put it in smoothies? Like how do
Oh,
you put it on
well, I mean,
salads or
I cook a lot. So I have my olive oil brownie recipe is like one
oh,
of my kids' favorites. So,
nice.
I mean,
Maybe you can share it with us. We can put it in the description.
okay,
Jessica's
sure.
olive oil brownies. Sounds good. I want to try them.
They're amazing. They're really
Okay.
amazing. But yeah, we cook with olive oil. We make eggs with olive oil,
We do too.
everything.
Yeah.
Um, whenever we're cooking, any recipe that's like not one that I've created, we adapt to use extra virgin olive oil. And
I have
salad dressings too.
Yeah, salad dressing. So that's something that's really simple that I think most of
Hmm.
us, again, not with any intention to be unhealthy, but you go to the grocery store and there's a whole aisle of salad dressing, right? And so it
Hmm.
never dawned on me that I could make salad dressing at home. And I have a good friend from high school who's really into cooking and
Hmm.
she reads cookbooks and all this stuff. So I'm at her house and she'll just whip together a vinaigrette. And I'm like, that's it. That's all you do. It's like, and it's so delicious. So now I've been making my own too. And you can get these like flavored vinegars and mix it with the oil, and then you put in some fresh herbs, and it's just delicious. So I think that's another thing that we think it's a shortcut step to buy the store-bought
Hmm.
dressing, but really it doesn't take any time at all to do that on your own at home, like maybe 3, 4 minutes.
Yeah.
So that's an easy thing that I think many people could do. And then there's far fewer preservatives, probably healthier fats.
Yes. Yeah. It's pretty hard to find a store-bought salad dressing that uses only extra virgin olive oil and not a blend of other oils. So it is worth making your own dressing. But I don't, I don't want to get too caught up in that because, that like I was saying, it's an eating pattern. So
Yeah.
another important aspect of this pattern is eating 2 meatless meals a day. So that means animal flesh at 1 meal a day. And that
Hmm.
can be, it should most often be fish or seafood, like 2 to 4 times a week. And then poultry, which could be chicken breast or, chicken, turkey, or duck, 2 to 3 times a week. And then red meat up to once a week. So
Okay.
that's
That kind
probably
of falls
something.
into that, like every day, once a week. Are there
Yes.
any things that you should eat less commonly than once a week?
It's just the red meat is the one. And then sweets are eaten 2 to 3 times a week on the Mediterranean diet. So this is another reason why I think, the whole like feeding kids, family meals in the Mediterranean diet goes so well together because it's realistic.
Hmm.
Enjoying food is a commandment of the Mediterranean diet.
Yeah.
It's really about that sitting around the table, having conviviality, enjoying food and conversation and trying new things and being relaxed with it. So it's like everything kind of goes together. It's not one thing. You can't just do one thing. You can't be like, oh, dessert 2 to 3 times a week on the Mediterranean diet. Yeah, I went for ice cream. I'm following the Mediterranean diet.
Right.
No, we got to like really incorporate all of the aspects. So again,
We'd be
think
really good at that part.
right? I know that part's easy. That's the easiest part of the Mediterranean diet. Well, actually, maybe having it just 2 to 3 times a week is the hard part for some people.
Yeah.
Knowing that you can have it is just not an everyday food. Typically on the Mediterranean diet, a meal ends with fresh fruit, and that's the
Hmm.
sweet. And then 2 to 3 times a week, you can
You do
have,
something else like the
yeah,
brownies or something. Yeah.
yeah, olive oil brownies. So
All
yeah,
right.
thinking about
So,
this as a eating pattern that's flexible, and this, you have this framework where you're eating 2 meatless meals a day. So, what are you going to eat instead of chicken breast? This is very hard for a lot of people. So, thinking about you can have plant proteins like beans, nuts, seeds, edamame, or soy. Those are all good plant proteins. You can also use meatless proteins like eggs, yogurt, milk, kefir. So, there are a lot of options, cheese also. So, and you want to have variety. Variety is really important. And then
mhm.
having whole grains as well. So, at some point in your day, instead of refined grains, you want to have either whole grains or starchy vegetables with your meal.
Yeah, let people know, what does that mean? Like, what is a whole grain versus a refined grain? Because some people may not even know.
Right. So, examples of refined grains are things like white bread, regular pasta, white rice. So substitutes could be black rice or brown rice. Quinoa is a great example of a whole grain. The best, like gold standard bread is Ezekiel bread because that's actually made with intact grains versus flour. Like even a whole
Mhm.
grain flour is not as good as an intact grain like quinoa or oats. So, or like having oatmeal. I think that that's one of the easiest things you can do is have oatmeal or granola with your breakfast because
Mhm.
then you've had your whole grains, so you're good.
Are you a parent who wants to read all the parenting books and you have maybe a growing list or stack on your nightstand, but somehow you just never seem to find the time to get to them? If so, I totally relate to you and I want you to know I'm here to help. Every month on the third Wednesday, I read, summarize, and present a parenting book that I have chosen that I think is a great one. And I do this via Zoom. If you'd like to get into the Empowered Parent Book Club, go to theparentdoctor.com/book club. This is totally free. It's a public service that I provide. And everyone who signs up gets access not just to the replay in case they can't make it to the live Zoom, but also to an actionable PDF that I create custom for each book that we read. So I would love to have you. This is a growing community now of over 200 members. These are like-minded, engaged, energized, supported parents who want to be more empowered for the sake of their kids. If you'd like to join us, again, please go to theparentdoctor.com/book club. See you there.
So those are some common examples of substitutions you can do. But, you know, if you're eating like, you know, bologna sandwiches on white bread every day, then it's not realistic for you to go to like, you know, peanut butter on Ezekiel bread. So you have to be incremental here with what you're going to change.
And realistic, I guess. So I was sharing with Jessica, I don't think we had that recorded, but like the entire year of third grade, I ate Wonder Bread with bologna and like I think those cheese slices that come in the plastic wrap. I don't even know if that's real cheese, like Kraft singles with mustard. This was and I guess my mom, she really didn't fight me on it. Although we had other battles about food, but it probably was really easy for her because every day you just slept together this sandwich. She doesn't have to worry about it. But I was very happy to eat that every day of third grade. And then as I grew up, I got kind of bored with my relatively restricted diet. And I remember in college going for sushi for the first time and being like, oh, this is interesting. And trying lots of foods. I was in college in New Orleans where they had lots of delicious food. So I actually ate a lot, gained weight, but it opened my eyes and my palate to a lot of different foods. And then later in life, just like you said you didn't eat a piece of lettuce until you were in your 20s. And then you had a whole line of salads that you created and designed for Gelson's here in Southern California as a registered dietitian. So there's hope for all of us who have kids who are picky eaters, right? Like we just want to keep, like you were telling me, offering the food. That's our job as a parent, is to offer the healthy options, to model the healthy eating, to encourage them to try things, and not to get emotional or angry if it takes a lot of tries, right? Because one thing I learned in my training is it takes on average, when a kid's trying a new food, at least 10 times of trying it before they're really likely to accept it. And trying it meaning putting it on their tongue. Before they even get to that, it's like tolerating it on the table and then tolerating it on their plate, right? There's so many steps to getting them to really sit down and welcome a new food.
Yeah, that's completely correct. And I will say, like, think back to anybody listening to this who, you know, started feeding their baby at 6 months, and the baby would make faces when they tried a new food, right? And if there was a food that they tried that like made them make an unhappy or a yucky face, most parents are like, forget it, that's off the menu. And they never offer that food to their kid again. And what you just said is they need so much exposure to new foods, especially foods that aren't sweets, right? It's very easy to like the sweets and the fruits. It's all the other foods that have different flavors like bitter, sour, salty, umami. Those flavors take more time to get used to and assimilate. And kids and babies have really sensitive palates. So it's a lot of input and new information for them. So being patient and not offering the same exact thing, you know, 5 days in a row, and then deciding that they're not going to like it, that also isn't the way to go. So, you know, you want to offer it in different forms at different times, in different settings and situations. And, you know, just be patient. It could take years, like it did with me with lettuce, right? And now I'm the salad queen. So there's always hope. And, you know, it takes commitment and patience. And, you know, just really adjusting your philosophy of like, how are we going to approach this? It's not about eating that broccoli right now. It's about getting to a place where you're willing to eat it with enthusiasm for the rest of your life. So there's a lot that goes into that.
So let's brainstorm. I have some ideas. I'm sure you have additional ideas of like for parents who are feeling stuck or they feel like I've tried that and my kid just doesn't like it, you know. Let's brainstorm. What are some ways that you can improve the chances that your child will be willing to tolerate, even if they don't try, but to tolerate the presence of a new food at the table or on their plate? Do you have any thoughts? I have a few thoughts.
Yeah, so I have a few thoughts as well. So I would say going back to family meals, that is the key. That really is. I mean, there's a ton of research on the benefits of family meals. And, just to highlight a little bit is kids who have family meals, who sit down two or even better, 5 times a week with adults to eat and in a nice, pleasant environment, they tend to have way better nutritional status. They eat a larger variety of foods. They eat more vegetables and fruits. And they have better health. They have better mental health, physical health. They have less incidence of overweight and obesity. And then beyond that, they do better in school. They have better self-esteem. They have a larger vocabulary. They have less risky behaviors, less likely to hang out with people who, do drugs or drink or have sex early. So there's so many benefits for the kids to sitting down to the family meals. And, the benefits aren't, you don't see them overnight, but they come
Right.
over time. And just having those social connections around the table are really, really beneficial for the long term for them. But also, sorry, just to say, like, exposure, what are ways to expose kids to healthy food? So for me as a kid, I had a garden with my grandfather.
Mm.
And so even though I was a picky eater, every Saturday we would go out to lunch at McDonald's and then go work in our garden where we were growing strawberries and tomatoes, two of my favorite foods to this day. But we grew tons of stuff. And so that's a really wonderful exposure for kids. And then bringing them into the kitchen and cooking with you. That is an amazing way to do it as well. One other thing I can think of is watching television shows about cooking or travel and eating. So that can really get kids interested and excited and wanting to try new foods.
I love it. I think you covered all the thoughts that I had. So the things that I've had success with my kids is like we live in Santa Monica where there's a big farmers market twice a week.
Mhm,
We live in an urban apartment, so we do not have a garden, but it's nice
mhm,
to be able to go and fresh fruits and veggies, whether they're things you grow in your garden or that you get at a farmer's market, taste so much better. I mean, growing up again in New Hampshire, I hated tomatoes because the things
mhm.
that were called tomatoes and sold to us were so grainy and tasteless and really awful. I mean, and even now they're awful. They've gotten better, I think somehow like greenhouses and stuff. I don't know, technology, transportation, we've gotten better fresh vegetables in the Northeast than what we had growing up. But vegetables were often like frozen lima beans in my house. It was really not very appetizing. So what I do find is like if I go to the farmer's market and the other day I found like this huge carrot, it was monstrous, and I brought it home and it was like, look at this. And my kids were like, whoa. And just because it was so massive, then we like cut it up and we all ate it. It was like, this is great. So I think sometimes the novelty of seeing
Mhm.
something and choosing it themselves, having them cut it themselves. You can get those even for young kids, those plastic
Yep.
knives where they can cut veggies. When they feel like they've prepared it, they're more likely to try it, at least try it, and have a positive experience with it. And I love your idea of the family meals because in neuroscience, we know about mirror neurons. So when we see someone else eating something and enjoying it, the same neurons fire in our brains to make us think like, maybe I would enjoy that. So if they see parents eating broccoli like 50 times, they're far more likely to at some point in the future, even if it's not in front of you, because they don't want to give you that benefit of knowing that you led them to try and like broccoli, but at
Right.
some point in the future, they'll be on a date and they'll get broccoli on their plate and like they'll eat it. And that'll be because you exposed them to it over and over again. I think that part is really important. I think most parents don't understand that, like how long it takes for a child to like things. They get angry and frustrated because they want their child to be a good eater, like someone who likes lots of foods and healthy foods. And like you were saying, you give it to them once or twice, they throw it on the floor when they're a toddler, and then you just say, oh, well, he or she doesn't like this. And maybe you talk badly about them to your friends, like they're a picky eater. That's what my mom did to me.
Oh.
And like, you just want to include your kids as like, well, yeah, it's normal not to like that now. Maybe you'll like it in the future. I'm curious, is there data that our palate changes? Like, I like bitter things more now and
Mhm.
like also savory things more now than I did as a kid. When I was a kid, everything sweet was what I wanted. And now, really, I don't like super sweet things. So, is that something that's actually biologically proven, or did I just do so much sweet eating that I burned my taste buds?
No, I think that as we try more foods and have exposure to more foods, our palates absolutely change. But I also tell everybody, everyone from my kids to people who come to me because they have to be on a low sodium diet and nothing tastes good. Every 2 to 3 weeks, we get a completely new set of taste buds. So
Mm,
within like 6 weeks, you can get used to any new flavor.
wow.
So yeah, so like we always talk about checking in with our taste buds, oh, I tried this a while ago and I didn't really love it, but let me check in with my taste buds and try it again.
I love that.
So
That's great.
yeah,
All right, well, this is awesome. So I think the takeaways are family meals should be a priority for all of us.
yes, because there's
Minimum,
there's health benefits for kids and adults
and
with the
not
family
just
meals.
health benefits from the food, but social, emotional, mental health benefits too. And healthy relationships with food benefits that last a
Hmm.
lifetime. And that
Yes,
should be a minimum of 2 times a week, but it doesn't have to be dinner. So
right.
even if it's just on the weekends or even if it's just breakfast, that would be a good place to start if that's not currently a part of your family's routine. 5 days a week would be optimal.
Hmm.
And we really have to model that for our kids. We have to accept it's going to take them lots of trials before they like things. And then give us the key takeaways again from the Mediterranean diet. Like, what are the everyday foods, the sometimes foods?
Okay, so key takeaways from Mediterranean diet are it's an eating pattern. So we have this framework for healthy eating, which is like 2 meatless meals a day, emphasizing healthy fats and replacing unhealthy fats with the extra virgin olive oil, avocado, fatty fish, nuts, and seeds. And then you want to have lots of vegetables. So like you need to have a produce item with each eating occasion. Think of
Hmm.
it that way, at least one. And by the way, parents who are worried about their kids eating enough vegetables, which every parent is,
Hmm.
the research actually shows that offering two different vegetables at each eating occasion helps them eat more of any vegetable. So
Ah.
and don't forget that you eat with your eyes too. So,
Hmm.
like chicken and potatoes are bland looking. They're like brown. They're not exciting. You got to use the fresh fruits and vegetables to add color and excitement to your plate. So, that think of it that way too. Like eating is like a multi-sensory experience. And so you want to highlight things that are beautiful and colorful and just kind of novel, like the big carrot or a
Yeah.
purple carrot,
Hmm.
so thinking about it that way too. So lots of produce. Most meals you would end with a sweet taste of fresh fruit, whole grains. So you want to make some upgrades to your more refined grains. So you can do oatmeal or granola, brown rice or black rice, which turns purple when you cook it. So that's kind of fun. And then having high quality grass-fed dairy products is important, and you can have a small amount of those things every day. You can have eggs, up to 7 whole eggs a week, so that's a great source of protein to think about. Drinking mostly water is also
Hmm.
really important. That's really the main thing. We can talk about wine, which is, you've probably heard part of the Mediterranean diet, but that's a personal choice. Nobody should start drinking if they don't already drink, and having it in moderation. And then dessert, yeah, a small controlled portion of dessert 2 to 3 times a week is important.
Okay. I love it. It's so simple, and yet I'm already thinking about how far our family diet is from that many weeks. But I'm trying not to be critical because I'm trying to
Right.
also have the growth mindset approach that you're encouraging us to incorporate. Having like a self-critical, punishing parent guilt mindset isn't going to help me or my kids, right? So I really want to just have a bigger heart about this, a bigger understanding, and to recognize that there's always room for improvement and to keep it positive.
Right. Yes, the growth mindset and being flexible and having fun with it. I think that
Hmm.
that's really important. Like last night we were at dinner, we were talking about what's everybody's, favorite recipe, and then what's your favorite recipe to cook,
Hmm.
right? So like, oh, like that idea that like, oh, it can be fun to prepare food and feed people and, try
It
new
is.
things.
It is
Yeah.
fun to prepare food. I mean, it feels really good to prepare a meal and have your friends and family be enjoying it, right? And so if we can teach our kids that skill, we're equipping them with something that's going to bring a lot of joy to them and to their friends and family in the future. And I think the family meal idea also lends itself very nicely to incorporating the kids more
Hmm.
into meal prep, which is win-win because ultimately they're going to feel more like they're contributing and therefore they matter more. And you're going to have, as they get older, hopefully a day or two a week that you don't have to do the meal prep. I mean, my son, he can cook now. Like he's 12, he can make a meal.
That's
So
right.
my 7-year-old's interested in learning and she's getting there. She likes to do the salad and the salad spinner. So that's kind of her thing right now. But it's great to have them participate too. And I know many parents who feel like they're doing so much for their kids and they're exhausted. If you work all day and you come home, you don't want to be resenting preparing food. That's going to make it hard to sit down and enjoy a family meal. So making it a family process in addition to a family meal that you consume together is a great opportunity, I think.
Right. And I just want to remind people that, do your best. We're all doing our best, right? Like you had
Hmm.
McDonald's last night for dinner. That was the best you could do. I mean, but maybe if you get more into the Mediterranean diet mindset, you could say like, oh, I know that we're going to be on the road for all this time. I'm going to make some sandwiches at home and bring them with us.
Yeah.
And then before we leave the meet, we will eat the sandwiches together on the bench and then we'll drive home.
Yeah.
So,
It's
but
true.
it's
With a little
just
foresight, I could have had a fun picnic, but I just didn't plan in advance. And
exactly
none of us are going to be able to plan in advance 100% of the time either. So we have to give ourselves some grace.
that's right. Fed is best, right?
Hmm.
So everybody needs to eat. It's more important that everybody gets to eat than the meal is perfect. Because
Yeah.
again, going back to the flexibility, it's really, really important. And so just knowing too, this is a long-term commitment and it's not always going to be pretty. It can be very ugly sometimes, in fact, but it's just like just committing to it and understanding what you're committing to and knowing it's a process is going to be really helpful too, because I think a lot of people are going to feel frustrated or feel like, well, if I can't do it perfectly, then I can't do it at all, or I shouldn't bother. But that's not what I want people to take away from this. Like, like, because kids never eat perfectly. Like, what,
Yeah.
5-year-old comes to the table with a smile on their face, ready to like try everything and clean their
Right.
plate. No, that's not realistic, right?
Hmm.
Families are messy and family meals are messy too. And that's okay. So you have to kind of go into it with that with accepting that and having an expectation that nothing's going to be perfect.
I think that's such a good point. One of the big things that I teach parents is kind of understanding that at each stage of development, there are things that are normal for that stage, that are
Mm-hmm.
abnormal for that stage, and that might be even pathological for that stage. So if your 1-year-old, for example, is like pooping in their diaper regularly, that's normal for most 1-year-olds. If
Mm-hmm.
your 15-year-old is pooping their pants regularly, that's at best abnormal, unless they have severe developmental delays. But at worst, it could be pathological, right? And just like you said, it is totally normal for kids to be not accepting of all the food that's presented to them at a meal. And sometimes, even in cultures where they do, I think, a better job than we do in the US, it's still the case that sometimes your kid's just tired or overstimulated or whatever, and they're going to be acting up at mealtime. And it has nothing to do with the food, but we can inappropriately assume that they don't like our cooking or take it personally or that they're a picky child, whatever it is. So I think that's a really, really good point that we have to have the expectation that it's normal for kids to refuse things that are new to them or that they're unaccustomed to many, many times before they come around to liking it. And, none of us like all foods equally, too. So even if your
Yeah.
child, like, who's that? President Bush used to say, like, and I don't like broccoli. So not everyone is going to like broccoli, even if you offer it to them 500 times. We still have personal preferences, and that's okay, too.
Right. And as you were speaking, it reminded me like, just think about yourself and your preferences. Even you don't feel like eating your favorite foods all the time,
Hmm.
right? So there's some days where like something just doesn't sound good, even though typically you like it. Kids go through that too.
Yeah.
So we have to be accepting of that. That's why, so I think the priority is starting with family meals, right? Everybody sit down. It doesn't have to be Mediterranean or homemade or anything like that. I think getting in the rhythm of having these meals, committing to it, kind of looking at your calendar, planning it, that's a good first step. And then you can start to improve your own approach to cooking and eating and using the Mediterranean diet as your framework. And, that means you're trying new things and getting used to something new too. But I do think that that's important, right?
Yes. I love it. I think that's a great way to end. I think that's really great advice for all of us to start with the family meals and go from there. Thank you so much, Jessica, for sharing this with us. I think this is going to be so helpful for families who listen. And if anyone wants to get in touch with Jessica, I'm going to put her email, or sorry, her website in the show notes. It's jessicasiegelrd.com. If you'd like to ask her more questions or reach out to her, feel free to do so. Thank you so much.
Oh, it was a pleasure. Thanks for having me.